Today, across the world, humans regularly bury their dead as an act of mourning and memorial. These funeral customs form an important part of our cultures across the world. These traditions date back thousands of years, and this begs the question, did our human ancestors, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, or maybe Homo neanderthalensis, also bury their dead in any similar manner? There is no clear evidence that the earliest members of the Homo genus, Homo habilis and Homo erectus, intentionally buried their dead. However, the fossil record of these human ancestors is patchy. When new hominin fossil specials are unearthed by archaeologists and paleoanthropologists, they are rare, but also priceless in scientific terms. Current archaeological records do indicate, however, two extinct hominid species who may have buried their dead, the Homo neanderthalensis and the Homo naledi. Theories differ as to the exact reasons and intentions behind these burials, but today we will seek to simply showcase a number of these burials and the evidence for them having been intentionally buried and not just buried due to natural processes. First discovered in 2015 in the Rising Star cave system in South Africa, at least 15 individuals of Homo naledi dating back between 236,000 to 335,000 years ago were unearthed. Right at the time of the initial discovery and revelation to the world, it was suggested that Homo naledi had buried its dead intentionally in the dark recesses of the Rising Star cave. The reason for the burial suggestion was that there was an extraordinarily high concentration of hominin bones with 15 individuals, and the remains seemed to have been intact and articulated with no signs of predation. Also, it seemed unlikely that the remains washed into the cave. The only way it would have been is if other Homo naledi individuals had carried the dead and placed them in the rear chamber. This was a long and difficult journey through the cave, completed by these small-brained and small-statured individuals. Begging the question, why did they choose to do this? The suggestion in 2015 that Homo naledi had intentionally placed its dead in a burial chamber in the rear of the Rising Star cave was astonishing and provocative in equal measure, and it stood up a lot of scientific debate, with many suggesting this could not be the case. But more recent, painstaking investigation of the site has strongly suggested that Homo naledi did place its dead purposely inside the cave chamber, with one fossil skeleton discovered lying in a crouched fetal position inside a small, deliberately excavated pit, apparently still holding a stone tool. The scientific debate on whether Homo naledi intentionally buried their dead over 300,000 years ago still continues. We now move forward almost 200,000 years to investigate the behavior of the nearest evolutionary relatives to modern humans, the Neanderthals. Neanderthals were a widely ranging Eurasian species who lived until about 40,000 years ago. The human fossil record is remarkably more complete for Homo neanderthalensis, with around 500 individuals currently in the fossil record, and this number grows every year. One of the reasons behind this is that it does appear that Neanderthals deliberately dug or excavated holes in the ground to place and bury their dead in. This meant that after death, their bodies had a much better chance of avoiding scavengers and being preserved intact and in an articulated position. 3 of the most notable of these burial sites are in modern-day Iraq and 2 in modern-day Israel. One of the most well-known Neanderthal burial sites is Shanidar Cave in modern-day Iraq. The discovery of several skeletons in 1953 spawned the theory of Neanderthals intentionally burying their dead. In this excavation, the bones of 7 adults and 2 infants were found, dating back between 35,000 to 65,000 years ago, all of which were laid out in arrangements which appeared unlikely to have occurred naturally. This image is of the burial of the skeleton Shanidar I, a Neanderthal male who had suffered numerous injuries during his life, having lost his right arm below the elbow, with the remaining upper section of the arm being extremely damaged. This reconstruction of the upper arm bone shows disuse atrophy accredited to amputation or a condition like pseudoarthritis, which would have occurred before death and showed signs of healing, indicating he survived these injuries and was later buried with care. When discussing Neanderthal burials, the Kabara cave site in modern-day Israel is another important example. This approximately 60,000-year-old skeleton is missing its legs and the top of his skull, and is believed to have been deliberately buried because of the aligned position of its bones. Most notably, the hyoid bone, a very delicate bone in the neck that is not attached to any others, was still intact, and there was overall no displacement of the bones. To many, this is a clear indicator that the body decomposed in an infilled grave.
There is still much uncertainty whether our extinct human ancestors did bury their dead or not, and it remains doubtful whether the Homo naledi did bury their dead with intent within the dark recesses of the Rising Star cave system. Moving closer to the present, though, the Neanderthals did seem to bury their dead with intent, but we are still unsure if this was simply maybe a sanitary process to remove the bodies, or if there was a deeper, more ritualistic meaning to returning their dead to the earth. Hopefully, in the years to come, the fossil record will provide more examples which will someday answer this question, whether this was intentional or not, and help answer the broader question of really what it means to be human.